Welcome back. I'm Alfred Lambremont Webre, and we're very privileged today to have author and Vedic scholar and Buddhist researcher Sheldon Moore from Nelson, British Columbia, with us today in part one of a deep dive into the Vedic and Buddhist traditions with galactic and deep Atlantean traditions and really widening perspectives here that, whoa, is just amazing. So Sheldon, thank you very much for putting together this presentation that I know through your writings we'll be putting links to all of your books in the article accompanying this interview. This will be part one of an amazing PowerPoint kind of explanation or narrative on a wider perspective of the Vedic and the Buddhist relationships to our galactic and other frameworks that we rarely think about as interrelated, those of us, I mean, certain of us. And I think our audience will really appreciate this. So perhaps we should just go directly into the share screen and the PowerPoint, and that would be a good place to start. And you can tell us how you got started in all of this.
Okay, I'll get the share screen loaded up here.
Oh, great.
Is it up on your screen there now?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. We've been talking offline, I don't know, it's almost 6 years now. It's kind of hard to believe. I was going to give much of this information back then. I've just been kind of sitting on it. One of the main reasons is when I was 23 years old, I got transferred to Perth, Australia. And by the way, I don't live in Nelson. I was born there. I actually live in the North Okanagan now.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And when I lived in Perth, I used to go to Asia a lot on business. And one time when I was in Bangkok, Thailand, you know, when you stay in hotels, there's usually the Bible in the hotel room in the drawer. Well, in Thailand, they have the teachings of Buddha in the drawer. And I was only 24 at the time. And I remember one night coming home from work and ate my dinner and went in and saw this book and started reading it. And it consumed me. I couldn't put it down. It was like the whole weekend, I remember I sat around the pool. All I could do is read the teachings of Buddha. It like overwhelmed me. I was intrigued by it. And so I used to travel to Asia all the time. So I started going to monasteries. And if you look on the images there, I started seeing pictures of men and women with these halos. Now, these halos you see over the heads in these pictures, it's called a solar aura. And it represents somebody that's enlightened. And you also see them in Hinduism. You see them even in Christianity, they will often have the halo. And really what it is who's somebody who has shifted their consciousness and attained enlightenment. And that's represented in these pictures. So I was only 24, kind of naive, a little maybe too ambitious. I thought, well, I'm going to try to figure out how we can have enlightened societies like this again, where everybody has their halo. We must be missing something. Why can't everybody be enlightened like this? And I was a little bit naive at the time. I didn't realize they were mostly pictorials of Tashita Heaven, which is the kind of place where these spirits go after they pass over. But when you hear people talk about the golden age, that's really a time where on earth, heaven comes to earth, and we all have the halos again. And I think when you're actually probably in a higher dimension, or another bardo, as the Tibetans call it, you would probably be able to see somebody who actually had a halo. So probably in our distant past, when we were potentially in a higher dimension, people could actually physically see them. And I think some people still can. And an interesting thing that I have the ability to do is, from reading this so much and actually watching YouTubes of Tibetan monks and stuff, you can actually start to see some of these enlightened individuals. They have a slightly different look, a bit of a glow to them. Even though you might not be able to see that full soul aura, there's definitely enlightenment there. So that kind of what led me on my journey of discovery, but it was a 30-year journey. Here it is 30 years later, and I'm giving this presentation now. So it wasn't just something off the cuff. It was a lot of research, but an experience too. You got to have, it's kind of like writing a cookbook and you've never cooked a meal. It's the same thing with the Dharma. There has to be an experience there. And so what we're going to go over today is some of this information on how people awaken in the past. And when I say past, I don't just mean the time of Shakyamuni Buddha or even the time of Krishna or Rama, even further back. We have a long history, and we have these ancient megalithic sites all over the world. A lot of people are trying to figure out what they're really for. And I think by the end of this interview, people will understand what a lot of these ancient sites were built for. And some of them are 12,000 years old. So, it goes back into our past quite some time. And so it's not just a Buddhist thing here I'm sharing with you. It's an ancient teaching. And you have to be a little bit careful with it though too, because some of this stuff is not for somebody who's just getting new into it. Don't race out and start practicing some of this stuff we're going to discuss in this series. Take your time. Build your spiritual foundation. It takes time. It takes time to develop the right practices. It takes time to really build your spiritual foundation before you're ready to go out and obtain that halo. Or it's still self-effort. But there are improved techniques. And we've missed a few things. We've missed some really important things, and our ancients all knew about it. And these sites that I'm going to talk about here kind of prove it. Use your own discernment, but we'll go through some of this. So that's really what drove me was these pictures I saw in these monasteries that with all these halos, and how come all these people can't have these halos again? And if you look at these bottom pictures, these are taras. These are actually in Tibetan Buddhism female Buddhas. So this is not just a man thing. A woman has the exact same potential. And in Tibetan Buddhism, they see the Tara as a female Buddha. And there's examples in their history of enlightened women. So it's not just this is not a male-dominated thing. And so we'll just go to the next slide.
Could we go back just a second, Sheldon?
Yeah.
Could I just want to ask some basic questions. When did the Buddha come to Earth? What was the time frame?
That was 500 BC.
Okay.
So Buddha was 500 BC. Krishna was 3000 BC, and Rama was 5000 BC. So Rama was
and who are those three? How would you characterize those three beings, and then their relationship to Jesus, sort of?
The next slides will cover that.
I see. Sorry.
They're all avatars, basically. They've descended from a higher place. That's what avatar means, is to descend from a higher place. And I've actually got a timeline when all these people, so your questions, there's a timeline.
Oh, I see. So I'm kind of anticipating stuff.
Yeah, good though.
Okay, great.
So we'll wait till those slides come up because people will have a better actual visual view. And this is kind of an interesting slide. This is Padmasambhava. He was a Tibetan sage. He actually brought the Buddhist Dharma to the land of the snows, which is Tibet. 1,200 years ago. So he was around 800 AD, so more recent than the Buddha, which was in the BCs. But he said an interesting thing. He said that when the Tibetans scatter like ants throughout the world, and horses run on iron wheels, cars, and iron birds fly in the sky, the Dharma will come to the land of the red men. And the land of the red men is North America, where we're sitting right now. And it's kind of interesting, the current lineage holder of a Kriya Yoga group in India is saying the same thing, that some of these coming avatars will appear in the western part of North America and teach up and down the west coast of North America. And we'll talk a little bit about prana. If you start researching about a lot of these Buddhists, like even in Tibet and some of these sages, they all have a great connection with nature. They live in these like a lot of these Zen monasteries, beautiful gardens, beautiful nature, lots of prana, like prana, which is the life force of the vril, the chi energy that powers us, powers our spirits, is in nature. It comes from the morning sun. It comes from living plants, flowers, new pine trees. And that's why a lot of these great enlightenment people, these gurus, they all seem to have a very direct connection with nature. And I think that the Pacific Northwest, all the way sort of from Northern California to British Columbia, you know what it's like when you go out into a forest or go out into Stanley Park. It's soul refreshing, you know what I mean? And so maybe that's why this so-called Great Awakening is supposed to occur. Really, it's not really going to start in Tibet this time, I don't think. It's not going to start in India. I think it's going to start in the west coast of North America.
Yeah, could you, when you say awakening is starting in the west coast of, in the west coast of North America, that has been kind of going on here since the 40s, since the 50s.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and it's kind of still going on. You know, you look at yourself. You're from, I think, New York, and you're in Vancouver. Eckhart Tolle, he's written a book that's really helped lift consciousness outside of a religious context as well. And he's in Vancouver. It's happening here because I think a lot of the souls may incarnate here, and it's maybe our lifestyle, our education. It's a bit of everything. Education helps develop the wisdom mind too, right? So it's probably a combination of everything, but I really think it's the nature. Like it's
right. Do you mind my interjecting comments with?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. Some of them might seem off the wall, but you know, it just part of our time here. We had a house out at Salt Spring Island, which for those who are viewing this program is an island off of Vancouver in the Georgia Strait, which is between the coast of the lower mainland of Vancouver and Vancouver Island. It's kind of this sort of inland sea or whatever, and or rather, Salt Spring Island is at the lower tip. It's a series of Gulf islands that are at the bottom of Vancouver Island, and Vancouver Island, as I understand it, is about the size of the state of California, just to give a more or less. And there's some knowledge that says that Salt Spring Island is very different from the other Gulf Islands. It looks like it was originally part of islands off of Asia, and almost during one of the earth changes was brought across the Pacific. And that the lore that I've heard there, and kind of the input that I've heard, is that when you're on Salt Spring Island and kind of sitting there, you're actually inside giant crystals from Mu. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, well, part of Lemuria kind of runs part of British Columbia was claimed to be part of Lemuria at one time, and it went all
I
the
see.
way across. So it is possible, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, good. I just wanted to give that kind of background to the statements that you're making so that people have more context.
Yeah.
Now this prophecy was made when?
Well, 1,200 years ago, he was roughly 800 AD.
I see.
Yeah. But just so you know, the Tibetans see him as the second Buddha. Like, he's very highly revered in Tibetan sects. There's really three main gurus that really affect it. Well, there's more than that, but it is Padmasambhava. And then a couple hundred years later, there was a person by the name of Tisha, who came from India again. And then there was an actual Tibetan homegrown Lama called Dzongkapa. So that's really the three. If you study anything to do with Tibetan Buddhism, study the works of those guys. There's also Milarepa and a whole bunch of other ones, and countless Dalai Lamas and Karmapas, and we could talk for 4 days just about Tibetan Buddhism alone. So I'm kind of just trying to gloss over it to get to the gist of this teaching that I want to share with people.
Right. And have you talked about the line at the bottom there on that slide?
No, but I wanted to mention that this is another prediction he made, that he said that in the future, in the age of degeneration, which we're in the Kali Yuga, we're in the age of degeneration. Many people will claim to be practitioners. They'll try to teach other people the Dharma. And this is kind of what you're seeing in the New Age community right now. There's a lot of people out there. I'm sure you've read a lot of this stuff too, that what was really going to happen in 2012. And there was just so many theories out there that the really most important thing people should focus on, if you want to really change this world, is change yourself and enlighten yourself, because that's the natural state we're really supposed to be in. And a golden age doesn't just occur by some magical wand. It also involves the sentient beings of that planetary system becoming enlightened, becoming spiritualized. So we're part of this process. So the faster, it shouldn't be a rush, but the more of us start really truly awakening, the faster this is going to occur on this planet. Like we're kind of in destiny. Like, we can make the golden age literally happen now if we want to, as a people. But we have to change ourselves first, and that's really what a lot of these teachings are about: is to change yourself, to awaken your own Buddha nature, to awaken to your own spirit. That's really what enlightenment is. So that's just, I put that comment was actually much bigger than that from Padmasambhava, but he's basically warning that this is going to occur in the age of degeneration. So there's a lot of shills, a lot of people trying to pretend they know this stuff and they don't. And more importantly, not having an experience and then trying to teach others you know what I mean? It's like trying to teach somebody how to cook and you've never cooked a meal yourself. That's really
right.
What
and so I guess that the implication of that is that there is a given body of wisdom, of cosmological insight, cosmological and spiritual insight and wisdom.
Yeah.
And that has its own integrity. What is the source of that body of wisdom? From whence does that come down? Says, without having received permission. What does that mean?
I think he's basically saying somebody who's had the experience, and a lot of the people that had the experience in the past were really avatars. They came from a higher world or a higher place. Some even came from what they call the Great Center. And this is not Alcyon Center. This is the Great Center beyond space, time, and false morality, to come back to this place to help us get unstuck. That's what an avatar is. They descend. It's not an ascension for them to come down onto this planet right now. but they come here out of compassion. And some of them keep coming back, and that's what a bodhisattva is, somebody who chooses not to go into final heaven or peri-nirvana, but they come back. And I've got slides that'll cover that process too.
Right. So I'm asking these questions because I'm very naive about this particular tradition.
Yeah.
And I assume that, you know, there are people in our audience who are Buddhist practitioners and understand that, but also there are people who don't understand that.
Yeah.
And so what you're talking about here is the process of souls that are incarnating into it's funny, we've been using the word avatar in a double sense. That is that it's Sheldon and Alfred are the avatars for our souls. That's a different way to use the term avatar, i.e. they're the containers. These are the bodily containers or vehicles for our incarnating souls, but that these beings that come in, the higher sense of the avatar, are very, very developed souls that come in to elevate a particular plane or a particular planet. Is
correct?
That,
yeah. Okay. And that goes into my next slide.
I see.
You're one slide ahead. It's great. You're asking.
Oh my God! I'm sorry. Is this...
No, that's perfect. That's why I really wanted to do this interview with you, because I know you had the type of mind that would get it. So why do avatars come to Earth? And really, it's basically very simple. They come to restore dharmic order in the universe, or really in the multiverse, because it's more than a singular. It's a multiverse. It's multi-dimensions. And they come to help humanity. And it's interesting, like if you look at these three, like everybody knows Rama, who I told you, who is 5,000 BC. That's where the Ramayana war, he came in Tetra Yuga. So they were still having problems. And we'll talk about the Luciferian Rebellion and how that kind of fits in between these two guys' lifetimes. And he's the same incarnation as Krishna. This is widely known in Vedic communities. He was the same life stream or the same incarnation, just like you had a different body in a different life before. Well, so did these people. And they just came from a higher place. Now, they're not above us or better than us. They're just coming here to help. And they do their thing like the Buddha. And then some of them eventually take peri-nirvana. And we'll talk about what that means. But that means just you've left the incarnation cycle here on planet Earth. And then we have Shakyamuni Buddha, and we talk about him a lot, but we also have Jesus, who also was an avatar. And just for Christians, we're going to go over a couple slides, because I really believe Jesus was teaching the same thing that Buddha was. And it's throughout the Gospels, and we don't even have all the Gospels, because he had the Roman Empire kind of editing his teachings. But it's clearly there. He was teaching the same thing, and I'll even give you references out of the Bible and stuff, but he was an avatar, a very important avatar. And he came in, when we go through this Kali Yuga cycle, he came in and right at the darkest point of the Kali Yuga cycle that I'm going to propose to you. So he came in a very dark time to bring light. So he was a very important avatar. So that Jesus came in a Kali Yuga cycle. Yeah, came right in. I didn't know that. Right at the tip of the darkest time. And wow. You know, look at the profound effect he's had on so many souls. You know, some of them might not be practicing his teaching to the full understanding, and things got marginalized with religion and things like that. But he was a very, very, very important avatar in our history. Yeah. May I ask you some questions? Yeah. Yeah. Now, so we have Lord Rama and then Sanatana Dharma. Is that the next one? Yeah. Yeah. So what that means is Hinduism is basically Sanatana Dharma. And then there's the Buddhist Dharma, which was Shakyamuni Buddha's teaching. And they're slightly different. There's there's kind of a creator God in Sanatana Dharma. They still believe in God.
I see.
Some people think that Buddhists don't believe in God because there's really no God in Buddhism, but he was a very able teacher, and he knew that if people relied too much on an external force to save them or whatever, that they wouldn't look within and find their own God spark within inside, or your own Buddha nature, and awaken to that. But there's an interesting thing in Buddhism. It's called this dependent origination, or emptiness. And all of the Buddhist masters that came after Shakyamuni Buddha all went into great study into emptiness and dependent origination, how we're connected to all things. And if you really understand emptiness from a conceptual level, you'll start to see that it's about our connection point to everything, the multiverse, everybody else, everything that lives. And when you really look at that from a higher level, it's basically God again. It's really so it's there anyway. He just knew that become enlightened, and then you'll actually perceive it and be connected to it more so than just as a concept. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just listening and learning. It's very, evocative, and it's kind of a learning curve here. Yeah. And so these are it could be just different emphases that each of these avatars are bringing.
Yeah.
Because the dogma, let's say that there's the Dharma and then there's the dogma, is that the dogma, or the kind of the models, the cosmology, say, surrounding each of these differs slightly. There's the Son of God cosmology for Jesus, and of course for Buddha, the Son of God cosmology is not apt.
Yeah.
Because he is more focused on the God within, that is kind of the holographic model, where each of us has a holographic fragment of God in us. Is that the correct approach?
Yeah, but I really believe, and when we go through some of this presentation, you'll see that I think that Jesus was teaching some of this same stuff.
No, right, yeah.
And we just missed it, and because religion gets in the way. We often create religion, so sometimes these great avatars come, they teach us something, then a religion forms around it. And then 2 centuries later, everything's a mess again. Like, we're really good.
I understand. I mean,
that's our history.
Some of the history says that the 4 synoptic gospels, which are kind of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which are sort of cut and paste gospels, were actually written by Flavius Josephus, who was hired by the Roman emperor, who was a Jewish propagandist and prophet, who was hired by the Roman Empire to make Christianity safe for the Romans. And kind of channel all of that.
And they made it fear-based too. They made it fear-based, because you get everybody into a place of fear, and they're easier to control.
So that perhaps what Jesus taught is not what's in the 4 gospels. That's kind of bastardized, so is the Buddhist doctrine, is it more verbal, or do they have written texts?
It's written texts, and then some of the more esoteric, more secret instructions that they might not just give out to the general public are often oral transmissions. So some things in Tibetan Buddhism, for example, High Lama would only give you orally when you're ready to receive that.
Yeah, and is this pre-Atlantean flood or post-Atlantean flood?
This stuff's all after. So this stuff is all after Buddha. So really from 500 BC till present day, all the Buddhist teachers, the sages that have come, and some of this Rama goes back to 5000 BC.
So
we cover
this
all of
would come. Yeah, go
I've
ahead.
got slides. Basically, I actually have the question you just asked. I have a slide that'll actually give you a better visual.
Oh, great. Okay, good.
So we've pretty much went through this, but I'll go through this. They do descend from a higher place, these avatars. They all had some form of dharma, whether it's the Gospels, whether it's the teachings of Buddha. The Krishna gave us the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of the Lord. They all came with a very powerful teaching, usually a higher teaching. And really, dharma. So people don't understand what dharma is. It's really the teaching, and it's the way, the truth, and the experience. There's usually an experience with these people that are bringing this. This is not fluff. These are highly spiritualized people in our past that came to bring us very important teachings, because they knew the real Yuga cycle, and they knew that the golden age was going to come, and they left these teachings here for us, because the only way to get out of this matrix or this level of cyclic existence was to attain enlightenment, and then the soul, which we'll talk about, can actually leave here. We're stuck in the reincarnation cycle, and some of we're going to talk about the Lucifer Rebellion. Some of that's not by design or by creator design. It's the dark ones again. We all know about that. And the other reason they've come is this cyclic existence, the wheel, the Dharma wheel, which they talk about. You just keep being born again and coming back and learning lessons. Earth, what is a spiritual ground, and we're supposed to be learning spiritual lessons, but we often get just caught up in the material world, our egos, whether we might be an emperor and the power behind that. We get caught up in these things, and we just keep coming back. And they knew at this time that the only way to break free during the age of Kali Yuga was to actually become enlightened and leave. And some of them actually don't leave. They keep coming back. And that's why the term bodhisattva comes from. It's somebody who doesn't leave. They come back, and they come back to teach. That's their mission. And there's a lot of bodhisattvas on planet Earth right now. And I talk about the lower astral of the bardo. And this is a very important thing to talk about. You've all heard about the lower fourth dimension and how there's negative forces there, archons, or the Tibetans called them mountain spirits. Padmasambhava, the guy that I gave you that quote, when he first went to Tibet, he couldn't build the first monastery because the dark forces there was floods, there was things were getting destroyed all the time. He actually had to subdue the mountain spirits, which are the archons. It's the same thing. It's just a different name. He had to subdue them before he could build Salme Monastery, which was the first monastery of Tibet. And in all the known literature, it was only him and King Solomon that were able to actually subdue evil forces and kind of get them to do their bidding, do work for them, and get them to behave. And I think with Solomon, though, he had Solomon's ring, which had part of the Chiamati stone. You've heard of the Chiamati stone? Solomon apparently cut a piece off the Chiamati stone and wore this ring. So I don't know if his power was over the darkness we'll talk about the Chiamati stone later, but in our whole history, there's really only been two people that really were able to subdue them. And the reason why we're stuck in this bardo, or this lower, after we leave our body, our soul leaves our body, the lower astral realm is where the first place you hit. And a Tibetan monk or a Rinpoche, some of them can come back within 49 days. They can go right through the lower bardo and come back and reincarnate. And then they're usually, their followers have clues of where to go, and they go out and find them. The average person spends as much time stuck in this lower bardo, where that energy of their soul gets harvested the same way it does through wars and suffering on the planet, and the other side. They don't know how to cross over. And if you ever heard the Lord's Prayer, as I walk through the valley of death, I'll fear no evil. I think it was King David that wrote it, but Jesus said that quite often. He's telling them how to get through the lower bardo. I will fear no evil as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. And the Tibetan Book of the Dead, or there's also a book by Sogyal Rinpoche the Tibetan book of the living and the dying. That book, which was written by Padmasambhava, and it was hidden. He actually wrote this book and was so worried that the dark forces, 800 AD, would get a hold of it, that he hid it. And it was for future, what they call Tertons would find these ancient and bring them to the public's eye. And that happened with the book of the Tibetan and the living and the dying. And that book really tells you how to die, because you don't want to get stuck in that lower astral, because you're basically kind of being used there just like you get used here when there's suffering and pain incorporeal or within a body. And so that book is very important on how to basically pass through that lower dimension and be able to reincarnate quicker, or pass that altogether and leave this dimension forever and go back to a higher world or wherever it is your soul's going to go, right? So peri-nirvana was the only way to break free from the matrix, because it is a bit of a matrix. We'll talk about that. Some of the things that are happening here, I don't think were actually like creator design. There was actually some interference, and it's still going on. And we were talking about that before we went online, about all the problems of just getting this to happen today. And really, peri-nirvana is what Shakyamuni Buddha happened to him. He was a Buddha, and there's only been 4 Buddhas in this last eon. He was the 4th Buddha, and there's only one more predicted to come. And so when he passed away, he left this physical realm forever. He's gone. He's never going to take a body and come back to Earth ever again. And personally, I know there's a lot of people out there channeling him and stuff like that. I don't believe that. I believe when you go so far away, it's very hard to have direct communication back with people on this planet after you take peri-nirvana. He's gone up. He's like went back to God, I guess you could almost call it, like the final place. Whereas many of us, we might leave this planet next and go to some 5th dimension world for a few lifetimes. You know what I mean? Like it's the soul has options.
Right. Here's a basic question. Like, I just found out that there's more than one Buddha. What is the definition of a Buddha? Okay,
that's a very good question. And Buddha is a little bit different. Like, we all have Buddha nature, and we all can awaken to our own Buddha nature, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be like what we call a wheel-turning Buddha. And what made Shakyamuni Buddha and all the other Buddhas different is they attained enlightenment, but he was able to identify the causes of human suffering, which is in the Four Noble Truths, and he left. He really only taught 2 things: why we suffer and how to end our suffering. And how to end our suffering is the 8 noble the Eightfold Path, and that's the steps to end suffering. And if you look at the Eightfold Path, it's in the Gospels, it's in the Old Testament. Like, a lot of this good teaching is in all religions. It's presented differently, but and it's the basic elements. Goodness, serve the common good, be good. It's that's the Eightfold Path. It's just the way. It's a way of life. So Buddhism, to me, is not a religion. It's just a way of life.
Right. Now, there's these may seem like fundamental questions, but a term that is thought very much mentioned a lot in these times is, quote, Christ consciousness.
Yeah.
And how does that compare to Buddha mind?
I've got probably the next slide or a couple slides away.
Sorry.
So that's why I wanted to do this interview with you, because I knew that you're going right into the really the term, I can answer it for you while we're there, I guess. Christ consciousness is a funny thing. Krishna, Christ with a K, K-R-I-S-T, Christ. Mm-hmm. In antiquity, so Krishna was 3000 BC, and a very influential person. He gave us the Song of the Lord, Bhagavad Gita. The term Krishna consciousness or Christ consciousness became widely used in the sort of Persian, that whole area, because he influenced that whole area. So if you were a sage at that time and your name was Alfred, they would say, oh, that's Alfred Christ. He's got Christ consciousness. He's enlightened. Does that make sense? So that's where that term Christ consciousness, it's really originally Krishna consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So Jesus, Yeshua came along, because, Jesus means son of Zeus. And I don't think he was the son of Zeus. Those were kind of the celestial gods that weren't really gods. I think he was the son of the creator, but we all are. Every man and woman on this planet is the sons and daughters of the creator. And we all have the indwelling God spark within that can become Christ consciousness. We all have that potential. That's almost our given right, I believe. And I actually think that's why there's so much confusion in this stuff right now, is it's part of keeping everybody down. Get everybody so confused on this stuff that nobody knows where to turn. Like, I know a lot of light workers and kind of seekers that kind of gave up after sort of pre-2012. There was so much stuff out there, what's going to happen and how the Galactic's going to save us and this is going to, and they forward this stuff onto their family and friends, and of course none of this stuff happened. And if we spent as much time practicing the techniques I'm going to share in these next few interviews we do, a lot of people would be enlightened right now. I really mean that. Like, the only reason I'm doing this presentation, and you can even tell your listeners, this is 6 years this has taken for me to actually come and even do this, is I believe it will benefit other sentient beings, and that's why we're talking today.
Sure.
So I notice you've given a lot of people come on talk about this Luciferian rebellion. What does it mean?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I first came across that in 1980 when I read the Urantia book.
Yeah.
I read it in I read it in Melbourne, Australia. I was there for 6 months, and it took me 6 months to read it, and that's kind of one of the central themes of it. Yeah. Of that book.
But it's a neat thing in Revelations where they say a war broke out in heaven, and Michael and his angels fought the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back, but they weren't strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. And people talk about these fallen angels, they lost their place in heaven. So just for example, say both you and I had our own Vimanas, our own flying machines, and we flew to the nearest star, Alpha Centauri, and there was a planet there. And I was the bad guy and you were the good guy, and we had a war, and we both shot each other and landed on that planet at the same time. Where do you think we're going to incarnate next? Back here or there? We're probably going to be in that incarnation cycle because we're in that solar system. And so we don't come back here. We stay there. And I think some of our history, some of that happened. Something came in from outside, and it wasn't positive. Some of it was positive. Not all of it was bad. We have brothers and sisters out there that are probably good guys, but I think we've had some bad guys too. And it's kind of naive to think that the old fight between dark and good and evil is only taking place just on this little planet when there's trillions of planets, right? It's
yeah. So now when you use the word, I just want to unpack a lot of what you're saying for people. We talked about this part of the show.
Yeah.
And you're using terms like Vimanas, which is another word for flying saucer, or UFO, correct? From the Vedas.
And I've got slides on that too that actually will go through the type of fuel they use, the type.
Oh, good. Yeah. So what you're saying is that if you go into the Vedic or the Yuga tradition, you're going into exopolitics, and you're going into, they talk about, way back when we had all these flying saucers going. Is that in the Old and New Testament also? Do you find them talking about flying saucers?
Elements of it, yes. Yeah, there's elements of it. Interesting. My slides actually, you're right on the track, but I cover all of this. So I've actually got some
I'm
good
sorry.
slides.
You know, just.
But there's some important things to understand about this Luciferian rebellion, is that a soul used to be able to move between all the globes in the multiverse more freely. See, it's not restrained by the speed of light. Your little orb inside you, your soul, it just has to think where it's going to go next, and it'll go there. It's more of the speed of thought, not the speed of light. But so you might have incarnated here for, say, 5 lifetimes to learn some spiritual lessons, and then poof, you go back to your home world or whatever. The souls used to be able to move around like that. The Luciferian rebellion, Lucifer was attracted to the pull of the earth. And so the souls were stopped from doing this. This is the part of the reincarnation cycle that probably shouldn't be happening, whereas we just get stuck and we repeat and we repeat and we repeat. And it's not just in this at the time of death that this is happening. Do you ever know your dreams get affected? Like some people, you've probably astral traveled where you felt you left your body in your dream state when you're sleeping at night, and you might come back and you're really emotionally tired. It's like you've just ran a marathon in your night's sleep. Well, that's kind of like getting stuck in that low astral after death. These archons, these negative forces, kind of influence the dream state too. So they mess with us in death, they mess with us in life, and they mess with us in dream state. And it's so easy to break free from all those 3 control points if you know what to do. It's really easy, and Jesus told us how to do it. All the great avatars have all told us how to do it, and we've kind of missed it. The main thing being fearlessness. And you know, after the Roman Empire got the Gospels, they kind of try to make it a little bit more fear-based. But he says, "Fear not." Like, I don't know, it's like over 100 times, I think, in the Gospels. There's a reason for that. So did Buddha. Because once you give rise to fear, you're more susceptible for outside influence. If you're just kind of loving and full of light and bright, they're not going to mess with you. They literally they can't. It's kind of your state, your choice, whether or not you're going to be affected by dark influences. And so we got stuck in this cycle of incarnation. And that's really what the Matrix is, you know, those mountains out behind you in Vancouver, they're still there. The house you're sitting in is still there. It's not like on the movie The Matrix where it powers down and the whole digital sort of hologram collapses around. There's still physicality around us, and we're spiritual beings in a physical body experiencing this moment right now. But at the soul level, we're supposed to be doing so much more, and that's really to attain enlightenment and further on in our journey. We're not supposed to be held back this long. And I really believe, I don't know for sure, so don't take this for as like I know this for a fact, but I think they have technology. I think there's technology is where they can, and they hear about the moon matrix, it's called the moon matrix, where they can mess with us when we consciously leave our bodies in the dream state. They can kind of mess with us when we go. So we're being blocked. We're being attracted to the wrong place at the time of death, and we're being used because it's the harvest. It's that orb inside you is like a billion suns. We're all very powerful beings, and it's like a parasitic thing going on here. So this incarnation cycle we shouldn't be repeating and repeating and repeating, and part of it's the Kali Yuga and just part of spiritual evolution. But there is I believe, some kind of mechanism there where there's technology used. So, you know, Lucifer Rebellion, they were fighting in heaven. You know, it sounds like a reptilian war versus, you know what I mean? Like it's right there in the Bible. It's kind of simplified, but I think that's really what's happened, is that whatever's went on out there has kind of come here, and we're just kind of living and playing it out all the time with all the drama and stuff we have on this planet right now. And we can break free from it so easily. It's so easy. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Right. Could you go back, because there are so many different points there.
Yeah.
and kind of go through each of the points.
Yeah.
Would that be
Okay.
okay?
So I talked about how Lucifer was attracted to the pull of the earth, one at worship. So whether you call it Mara, the devil, whatever. And I don't really know about the book where they say that he was uncreated and everything's good, because I don't see that really yet. I don't really feel that yet either, but I could be wrong. So I think it's still very much active. This dark force is still very much present here. And we'll talk a bit more about that when we go into the Yuga cycle. And there's another reason for this, that when we come back, incarnate again. So say you were a high lama in Tibet and you were almost enlightened or enlightened in your past life, and you incarnate again here, your whole memory's wiped. Very few people have the memories of their past life. So all of those spiritual experiences, because the soul really doesn't care about what your bank PIN number was, or what your name was, or even what your face looked like. It's about the soul experiences and the human to human contact and the love and all of those type of things are really what's important to the soul, that's retained, but somehow it gets scrubbed when we incarnate again. And it's not until you reach enlightenment that you start remembering some of your past lives and these things. Usually some people get glimpses when they have dreams and stuff. When you have reoccurring dreams and you feel like you're really there, often that's a past life type of an experience. So I think they're scrubbing in this, however, this matrix thing, they're scrubbing the memories of people. So when we come back, we don't remember a lot of those. So we have to start over again, and we're kind of dumb and can be abused again in a ways from a spiritual perspective. And that's what I was trying to point out there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, these are very good points.
Yeah.
For example, go ahead. Well, no, either. If you could go back, I know you want to get ahead, but there's some very good points. Interfere with death experience and use technology.
I don't know for sure, but it has to be something there. And we'll talk a little bit about the moon matrix a bit later, but yeah, there's been some kind of interference here. I think this is not the soul shouldn't have all of this interference really. And it could be just part of the Kali Yuga too, like, cause this is the dark age, and we're kind of coming out of that now. And that's another mistake we made in our history, is how long it really is. The cycles we're all out of whack with how long these cycles are, but that's good news, cause we'll get to that so can I move, or you got more?
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
So there's some basic challenges for everybody on this path to higher consciousness, because that God spark, that Buddha nature that's usually stuck below the navel, it's in all of us, and it's really it's that inner voice that knows what's good, what's right and wrong. It's when you're doing something bad, it's that little voice. That's your spirit. We often listen to our minds too much. Our mind's just an organ with potential, and it's racing around and all kinds. But when you really slow down and you listen to your spirit, it's where that we all have that deep source of wisdom, because at the spirit level, we're all very old souls. We all are. There's not a lot of real young souls on this planet right now, even though we act like it sometimes. I think we're all a lot older than we give ourselves credit for. So the main thing is the mind. The mind is the biggest stumbling block, because it thinks it's the center of you. It uses the body and the five senses to give it pleasure. Most of us only live a mind-body existence. We don't really truly recognize the spirit. We might say that or whatever, but it's not the driving force of our being. Most of us are driving around, racing around because of what the mind wants, not really what the spirit needs. There's a difference, right? And the mind is busy forming attachments and making distinctions. That's the disease of the mind. A lot of the great Zen masters in China and Japan were very big on that, about the negative effects of making distinctions. The mind's always got to judge. This is good. This is bad. We're continually judging, and so the mind never really rests. It's just going, and that's kind of the state the other side wants us to be in all the time. So we're never really listening to spirit, because when we listen to spirit and live in spirit again, all of this stuff ends. It ends really quickly. we're that powerful. So we got to watch our thoughts and watch our words and watch our actions, because they really, really are that powerful. And the other thing is the lure of the material world is overwhelming. You know, when you grow up, you start watching TV and you're not successful unless you have a big mansion and a nice car. And we get caught up in all this crazy materialistic stuff, and it's meaningless. It's not what's important. It's the really soul to soul contact with other people, and soul growth is what we're here for, and helping others. And I think lifting this planet up. This planet has a lot of potential. Often the higher teachings get marginal, and you've already alluded to that with some of the Gospels. They took the fragments of these and then kind of wrote them into their own, you know, they hired a Greek writer to translate them, and then, you know, you lose a lot in the translation, and then they, you know, kind of threw their own stuff in there, and they've actually removed Gospels. We don't have all the Gnostic Gospels. I'll get into that a little bit later, but they removed a lot of stuff. And the main thing is failure to start and failure to complete too. You gotta, there is practices needed on the spiritual path. There's efforts that have to be made. You got to develop the wisdom mind. That doesn't come overnight. The techniques can take sometimes decades. You hear about Tibetan monks spending 20, 30 years in caves before they become illumined. Now, when I used to see that picture of all these enlightened societies, I knew that no Westerner is going to do that. And what about all the women? You know, they might be raising kids and really busy. How are they going to become enlightened when you got to go sit in a cave and kind of isolate yourself? And the fact is, you don't, if you understand what, by the end of this presentation, what I've said, you don't have to do that. You can get there. It's not a race, but you can get there a lot sooner if you understand some key things. And that was one of the things that I realized 30 years ago, is I had to be able to explain enlightenment actually in a physical context, so a Western mind could actually see what exactly is occurring and how it's occurring. You have to stretch your imagination a little bit, because some of this stuff is etheric in the spirit. You know, I can't hold up a spirit and say, here it is, but I'm going to show you one here in a few moments and show you the connection of all of that. So, Sanatana Dharma, which is really Hinduism, you asked about that earlier. Originally, it was experience-based and not belief-based. It's just become more like a religion in more modern times. The fundamental teaching, all souls can experience moksha or liberation. Moksha is just another word for enlightenment. That's just the Hindu word for enlightenment. And this is right out of the Upanishads. When all the desires of the heart cease, the mortal becomes immortal and obtains Brahma, becomes enlightened, can leave this existence. This is, they were teaching this thousands of years ago. Has a rich history of awakened sages, and this is where you ask about the Christ consciousness versus Krishna consciousness. It's the same thing. It's just, you know, Krishna was 3,000 years before Christ. So it's that term, Christ conscious, it doesn't matter what your name was, they would have said you're Alfred Christ. You know what I mean? That's if you were enlightened back in that time. Developed some of the best techniques, and it has a rich history of competent astronomers and astrologers, and we'll get into that a little bit too. And then there's the Dharma of Shakyamuni Buddha, and he was the fourth Buddha. There was three before him, and way earlier. Probably some of them might have even went back into Atlantean times. It's really hard to try to track the other Buddhas. They go back so far, and there's so little information on them. We don't have their teachings, hardly nothing. It's just they know their names, and that's about it. He knew other people could awaken to their own nature because he experienced it himself. He went the hard way, though. He was practicing very hard, took the extreme sort of yogi type, and almost on his deathbed the night he became enlightened. And remember, he became enlightened at night, and that's on a full moon night. So we'll talk about that a little bit later too. And he really taught two things: why we suffer and how to end suffering. That's really the gist of the Buddhist teaching. And why we suffer is contained in his Four Noble Truths, and how to end suffering is really the Eightfold Path, which is really just a way of life. An interesting thing we'll talk about is he gave a separate teaching to the very first king of Shambhala. His name was Ruda Chandra, I think is excuse me if I pronounce it wrong. And that Kalki king returned to Shambhala, and it became an enlightened society. The whole society became enlightened. I was very intrigued by this years ago. I wanted to know more. How did that society, everybody became enlightened?
Well, yeah. Now, you've used the term Shambhala, and many people watching this may not know what Shambhala is.
Yeah, I've got the next slide that goes.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. Shambhala basically is kind of a mythical kingdom. It's in the Puranas, and it's in Buddhist folklore. So it's both the Hindu and the Buddhist sides talk about Shambhala. It's also called Shangri-La later on. I think the original Vedic name is Sambhako, but you know how we change things with time. And it is seen as a mythical kingdom, and it may be under the earth, inner earth.
You mean at part of Agartha?
Yes. Yeah.
Inner earth.
Agartha apparently is just a city within Shambhala, I believe. Shambhala is actual place. And then there's some people who say, like, if you ask, Tibetans are very secret about this. They don't like to talk about some of this stuff. They'll say that Shambhala is where the sort of this dimension meets the next dimension, so it's in a different spiritual plane. And then there's some that say a component of Shambhala might actually be on a different planet somewhere else. So, but it is a place, and that the first Kalki king came to the surface and apparently got this Kalachakra Tantra teaching from Buddha, and they went back and became all enlightened. And now the weird thing is you'll first ask, well, how come Buddha didn't teach it on the surface? And most people don't realize, but at the time of Buddha, there was about 1,000 monks that traveled with him, and most of them were said to be enlightened. He enlightened them all. So he had some kind of technique that was able to help sleeping souls awaken much sooner, but he didn't share it openly, I don't think, because we were entering the age of the Kali Yuga. We're entering the Dark Age. And it's like Padmasambhava. He hid the book of the living and the dead, which is a path through the bardo or through the astral realm, for 800 years or almost 800 years until they found it. And I think a lot of these guys knew that we were heading to the Dark Age, and it wasn't time. It just wasn't time.
Right. Now, I don't know where you are in terms of the presentation, but my mind is going, Could you define what enlightenment is? What is, because you say, oh, and he enlightened them. What is the technical definition of enlightenment? Because I've had like peak experiences. Is that enlightenment?
No, that would be called a glimpse of enlightenment.
I see.
You have glimpses before your final awakening. And this is, I should be tarred and feathered for even trying to answer this question, because it's trying to explain enlightenment is a hard thing to explain. But the best way I could explain it is, and maybe again, the other slides will really show it better, but our soul, our Buddha nature within, when we're born, before we're born, attaches to your lower chakras. And that's where it sits. So, you know, when you get scared, you kind of hold your hand over your chest. It's kind of, you're protecting that inner nature. It's not really, why don't you do that, or cover your kneecaps or something. You cover right in your chakra, right in your heart chakra. And if you ever notice, if you ever had your heart broken in life, everybody goes to that. It hurts here. It hurts in the middle. It doesn't hurt right in your heart muscle. It hurts right it doesn't hurt in your head. If we're just mind identifying, why doesn't it hurt? That's your Buddha nature. It's that God spark inside all of us. It has to shift. It has to come up. It has to be at the crown chakra to get that halo you see on Buddha up there, to have that halo around your head, or the solar aura. And the best way to describe it is perpetual bliss. After you go through that experience, it's perpetual bliss. You don't go through depression, happiness, sadness. It's just bliss. You have perpetual bliss. That's enlightenment. That's the natural state we're all supposed to be at, but we have to earn it. And we have a lot of people, or a lot of energies trying to hold us back from it, but it's real, and everybody has the right to experience it. It's our natural state. It's where we're really supposed to be. And then there's the Dharma of Jesus Christ. I really believe he was enlightened during his 40 days in the desert. He had a complete teaching, and he spoke in parables. And I think that's important, because I'm going to bring up some parables that he's spoken that really clearly show he was teaching enlightenment just like Buddha was. And that's, you don't go to any church and they're teaching you any kind of meditation to become enlightened or illumined. You know, that stuff's all kind of, it's religion now. It's not really a spiritual teaching in a lot of ways. But there's still a deeper teaching within the Gospels that remain. Excuse me here. And there was some editing and some have occurred, and we've already talked about that. So his message was really heavily centered by the Roman Empire. And, you know, was the Roman Empire serving the common good of humanity? No, it was back to that dark stuff, which we don't really need to talk about too much today. But here's one quote out of Matthew. Therefore, the eye be single, the whole body shall be full of light. You know, he's talking about non-duality, where they talk about not seeing the distinctions, which I talked about, but seeing everything as one in a non-dual way. Your whole body will be full of light. You know, you can't make it any more simple than that. That's very clear. He's talking about enlightenment. He's talking about the same thing Buddha did, and all of these other great teachers have brought to us. It's the same thing, and it's in the Gospels. He also says the meek shall inherit the earth. That's the same thing about being humble. You know, it's really the humble people that are going to, and when you say inherit it, that's probably because they're going to be enlightened, and they're going to live on into the golden age, or incarnate into the golden age, because heaven is, at some point, heaven is coming to earth. That's what this is about. Had some more sayings. Live for today, for the morrow shall take care of itself. Live in the now. He wrote The Power of Now 2,000 years ago. He's telling people you can't worry about the past. You can't worry about a future. You just got to be in each moment. And that's kind of where awareness, which is the real first stepping point into higher consciousness, comes from. And that's in his teachings. He also says you can't enter the kingdom of heaven, which is peri-nirvana, which we've talked about, unless you're born again of water and spirit. So he's saying just the baptism is not enough. You got to be born again in spirit. And that's what I just told you about. He's talking about shifting your Buddha nature and becoming enlightened, or shifting your soul consciousness and becoming enlightened. That's what he's talking about. It's also talks about you have to be childlike to enter the kingdom of heaven. Christ consciousness. If you ever watch some of these Tibetans get interviewed, they're like little kids. They're innocent, and they're almost what we'd see as goofy, but don't underestimate that goofiness. That's somebody who's enlightened, right? And that's what he's talking about. You got to be pure, like an innocent, like a child again in spirit to enter the kingdom. Pray also that the eyes of the heart may be enlightened. You know, a lot of times we think prayer is you close your eyes and you wish for things and hope for better things to other people, but there's also another component to prayer, which was deep meditation. And where the people approached him and his disciples were in the park, they were meditating. He was teaching them maybe Kriya Yoga. I don't know. He was teaching them meditation techniques. It's in the Gospels. And more importantly, in Luke, the kingdom of God is within. He's talking about that Buddha nature, that God spark. No other extraterrestrial race or advanced race can create that. That soul is something very unique to each one of us. And they can capture it and maybe get it into a lower Bardo astral realm, and vampire off it and cause us to have nightmares and things like that. But they can't create it, and they don't own it. And if you awaken to your own soul, they'll literally have no effect on you at all. So some of these missing Gospels, we only have fragments of the Gospels of Mary Magdalene. There's a lot of conjecture whether or not she was his partner. It's none of our business anyway, but it probably was. It's very highly likely. They're even finding scriptures that say that. But this is out of the fragments of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and she said that Jesus came so each soul might discover its own spiritual nature and return to the place of eternal rest beyond constraint, time, matter, and false morality. Again, that's peri-nirvana. That's peri-nirvana basically being described in Christian terms. Another one is the Orthodox Church has a term called potfig that states that the spirit hates sin, but the mind and the flesh dwell in it, because most of our defilements don't come from the spirit. they come from the mind and the flesh. And that the pull of the earth keeps pulling us down, and that's talking about the wheel of samsara, and that could partly be part of the control matrix that's causing us to recycle a little too much. But and that's why I think a lot of these avatars came here, is to help us get unstuck from this. He also very likely was taught Vedic and Buddhist philosophy in the East, because there's a big period of his life where he was missing. And then the Essenes were this mystical group of people that lived around the Dead Sea, and they said they had teachings to help sleeping souls awaken. And guess what? John the Baptist and his mom and father were both Essenes. So he may not have had to get this information from Vedic or Buddhist type monks in the East. It might have already been there, right in the Holy Land. You know, we'll never really know that, but it's now another interesting one is a guy called Origen Adamadius. He ran the early Egyptian church, so he was 185 to 245 AD. Probably the most important theologian, but you can't go get his works and then be assured that you're getting the truth, because the Roman Empire captured his teachings and they tortured him. He eventually died from the torture because they called him a heretic. If you talked about anything outside sort of what they wanted, it wasn't a good thing, right? But he taught that we all can be godlike in spirit by doing good things. We can never be God, but we can be godlike by doing good things. And he claimed the soul comes back many times until it reaches a state of purity and is resurrected. So we kind of misunderstand this whole resurrection thing. And only then can man return to God. So he's talking about what you have to do to get to parinirvana and actually go all the way home, rather than just get reincarnated again. And as I already said, he was tortured. So you have to almost read all the Buddhist and Vedic philosophy, and you go back and look at his work, and you can really see where it was altered. And so the early church, they all taught this stuff. It's out there. So now we want to go into, you've probably seen this quote before, those who look to the stars will be ever fated unto those who fated their destiny upon them. And this is really what Buddha called dependent origination, that we're connected to all things. We're not just connected to our ancestors and the food we eat and the water we drink and the people in our local communities, but it goes up to another level. We're connected to our solar system. We're connected to all the other solar systems. Our galaxies interconnected to all the other clusters of galaxies. If you look at this picture, these little dots are all clustered galaxies, and there's literally, we don't know how big the universe is anymore. There's literally trillions of galaxies, probably with, trillions and trillions of planets that could potentially have life. The universe is huge. It's massive, but it's also all interconnected. And so you really can have creation, co-creation, and evolution all kind of happening in the multiverse. We all start fighting about these different terms, but it's all occurring. And as spiritual beings, though, our role in this multiverse is really to become enlightened and become the best spiritual being we can be. That's what we're all here for, to grow. And it's a little bit stuck here right now because, we talked about the Lucifer Rebellion, but it's also partly because of where we're at in the Yuga cycle right now. So everything is dependent on other things to exist. And this is really where emptiness, they talk about emptiness in Buddhism, where everything is just interconnected. And when you start to see that interconnection, we can talk about it now and you can intellectually perceive emptiness, how we're all interconnected. But when you become enlightened, you experience it, you're connected to it. Does that make sense? It's an expansive thing as well. It's not just perpetual bliss, but it's a very expansive thing. So emptiness must not just be experienced, it has to be intellectualized. So somebody watching this, if they really want to learn more about emptiness, really read like Hui Ning, which was a great Chan master, which was really the foundation for Zen. Atisha, Tsongkhapa, and probably Nagarjuna, the essays of Nagarjuna, which was an Indian Buddhist monk. They really captured the essence of emptiness. And I think really what they were capturing is when you see all things interconnected, you kind of see God again. It's not the creator God with the white beard that rules over us like we're string puppets like that. It's not that God. It's the pulsating light of oneness, the it's the pulsating light of all creation. It's something much bigger than what we kind of perceive God to be. And I think that's
yeah. Now, why is that called emptiness? I don't kind of get that.
It's called emptiness because nothing exists completely on its own, and nothing is permanent. Even those mountains, beautiful mountains behind you in Vancouver, they're not permanent. They'll eventually wear away and go. There's nothing permanent in everything, so everything is empty.
Right. So that, but that's talking about the universes of time, energy, space, and matter.
Yeah.
I.e., which is what the multiverse is composed of.
Yeah.
I.e., the material world, time, energy, space, and matter.
Oh, got the phone ringing here.
Oh.
That's okay. I'll just let it ring.
Okay.
Here, give me a sec. I'll unplug it.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I've got pickers or pruners here today, so I got like a bunch of people.
Right. So this applies to the material universe.
It's not just the material; it's also the spiritual too, because this soul that we're going to talk about later, or the orb in us, shouldn't be seen as something separate. It's also empty of any, because it's like when you see a raindrop fall in the ocean, is it still separate? Or is it part of the ocean now? It's kind of like our consciousness when we go to the other side. It's not so much as independent as we kind of like to see ourselves as a separate little entity, independent person that's kind of expansive. It kind of goes back to the whole again, if that makes sense. It's hard to explain emptiness. We literally could have a whole session just on
yeah. So really what you're talking, I'm trying to pursue, what you're talking about boundaries. In other words, boundaries are what define emptiness. This use of the word emptiness. In other words, what defines me is that there's a boundary here that defines me, and
it can be seen that way. Yeah, it's a kind of a hard thing to explain. It's I knew even wonder if I should put that in the slide, because once you start getting into discussing emptiness, it's all things are independent of a permanent sort of existence. That's what Buddhism was really trying to get with emptiness, is that there's nothing permanent, nothing's fixed, and we're connected to all other things. You need food, you need ancestors to exist. It's like a house, for example. It consists of windows, walls, and everything, but it could still be it's still empty inside. And nothing of it's going to eventually erode and be gone again and not be there. It's not permanent. And that's really what they're trying to kind of allude to in emptiness, is that just all things are empty of any inherent existence.
However, aren't souls eternal, or do souls transmogrify into some
they're
eventuality?
They're eternal, but I think Buddha was very careful not to talk about a soul. Like when people ask him, he kind of remained silent. And the reason I think he did that was if you start seeing, because we're going to show you actual pictures of souls here in a minute. If you start identifying your soul as something separate again, you're kind of still in that trap of individualization, because when the soul goes back, it kind of becomes more, it's connected to everything. It's not so much separate. It's like that raindrop of water falling in the ocean. When it falls back into the ocean, it's not separate anymore. You're not going to be able to find it's part of the, does that make sense? It just becomes part of all consciousness. And really the soul is just pure consciousness, and it kind of goes back. But it can come back again as a kind of, as you, to learn more lessons. So there is kind of the Tibetans call it a life stream. I think theirs is a better version. They just say it's a life stream, and it's kind of just going on its journey and getting the body here and there and going back to the bardo and getting another, you know what I mean? It's I hope I answered that question, but it's
yeah, I mean, it's just,
yeah,
learning more.
So now let's talk about this Yuga cycle, where I also believe that you remember that commercial, "Help, I've fallen down and I can't get up," and everybody used that. Like, we're kind of like that in where we're at right now in the Yuga cycle. Nobody really knows. There's a lot of conjecture out there. But it's really, want to go down, it's broken into 4 cycles, and there is a 4-3-2-1 ratio. And traditionally, the Yuga cycle was tied to a Maha Yuga, which is 4.32 million years, quite a long time. So it takes, basically that means it takes 4.32 million years to get through the 4 Yuga cycles, and they're different length. So, and 1,000 of those cycles equals a Kalpa, which is 4.32 billion years. What's interesting about this is, why were the ancients and the people that gave the Vedas to the Indians, because they said it was from somewhere else, and some Vedic researchers might argue with you about that, but let's not forget, Krishna had blue skin. Rama had bluish light green skin. They were different colors. Let's put this in perspective. So it's a very good chance. And then you hear about a lot of native Indians talking about meeting people with blue skin. I think it was the Hopi or one of the Plains Indians that talked about meeting people with blue skin. And, like, Krishna had blue skin. So look at the times that they were monitoring. So obviously this came probably from somewhere else, a lot of this teaching.
Yeah. So is Krishna the responsible kind of source of this material?
Not really.
I mean, are the blue skinned people?
Yes. He gave us the song of the Lord. The Mahabharata is all about Krishna and the Kurukshetra war. And most importantly, he gave us the Bhagavad Gita, which was kind of a discourse, kind of like about how enlightenment works in the soul. Everything we're going to be talking about here, he gave to Arjuna on the battlefield before the church. And why it's so condensed and such a marvelous document is, when you're just about ready to go into battle and you're trying to talk about the great way to somebody, you're going to kind of condense it and get to the gist really quick, right? You don't have time to talk about emptiness for a day or something like that. So it's very condensed, but it says everything we're talking about.
But I guess what I'm getting at, this cosmology, are the blue-skinned peoples, are they credited with this cosmology?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, well, that corresponds to a totally separate source of interviews that I've been doing.
I would imagine
with what are called the Blue Foundation ETs, and these are interdimensional beings that are blue, and so and that are very much connected with this knowledge, and that are, quote, back again. So it's just, anyway, there's just a lot of correspondence. Yeah. So I'm just saying, hey, bingo, there is correspondence here.
They may not be blue this time, so just remember that. Like,
but I'm saying, right. Yeah, but I'm saying that this isn't the only place that I've heard that they were blue.
Yeah.
I've heard it elsewhere.
Yeah, and I've only kind of touched on the surface. There's a lot of ancient peoples who talked about blue-skinned people. Like it's kind of mind-boggling how much was out there. So the Satwa Yuga, which is the golden age, is really the long period, and then Dharma is or virtue is at 100%. That's the golden age. Tetra Yuga, it's at 75%. Dwarpa Yuga, it's at 50%, and obviously the Kali Yuga, which is the dark age, which we're just coming out of. We're actually, and I'll explain that in a minute. A lot of people believe, if you talk to most Vedic researchers, they will tell you there's 427,000 more years of the Kali Yuga. And just use your own, you have an expansive thought capability. Do you really think we could last another 427,000 years of this dark age? Like, we can't. That's where they made the mistake. And the reason they made that mistake is, again, I think, confusion.
Where who made what mistake?
That the yuga, the length of the yuga is not, it doesn't fit into one Maha Yuga. We do not have 427,000 years of Kali Yuga left. We just don't. We could. I have actually gone online, and there's scholars saying that the Kali Yuga ends in 2025. I mean, there are serious Vedic scholars, guys out there with all sorts of Vedic credentials, arguing seriously. Oh yeah, and we're going to
go. The Kali Yuga ends in 2025. I mean, which I have cited because that kind of supports some of hypotheses that I've been putting forward. I mean, I'm just saying.
It does, and I actually think it ends before that, and that's where we're getting to. So we're getting into some pretty cool stuff here now.
Okay, good.
So on the traditional Yuga cycle, it's 1.78 million year or 1.728 million years of the golden age. So that's the big section, and this is where the Kali Yuga, the dark age, lasts 432,000 years. And the reason they say there's 427,000 years left is because Krishna ushered in the Kali Yuga, and he was 5,000 years ago. So we've only burned off 5,000 years of the dark age, and we got 400,000 years of this. This globe won't survive. We won't survive as a species if this was true. It's back to why everything gets mixed up. Why did the Gospels get edited? Why do we lose the Kalashakra Tantra and only have fragments of it? Why? It's part of the show, if you know what I mean. It's part of the mix-up. It's to just get us off track on everything, basically. And it's worked very well. They've done a good job. So that's what they think. Now, Shiryak was a contemporary. This is a contemporary. This is Shiryak. I don't know. Can you see my cursor right there? That's Shiryak. Now, he was probably the most important Kriya Yoga master, one of the most that has ever lived. And he died in 1936, so he's not 5,000 BC. This guy was very recent, very, very recent. And he formulated a non-traditional view of the length of each yuga. And he didn't just pull this rabbit out of the hat and make this up. He was referring to the law of Manu. It's a book, part of the Vedic books, Vedas, which is not really well known. And he basically determined we got the almanacs wrong. And I 100% agree with this man. And anybody when we finish this presentation, study his Kriya Yoga, because it's one of the most effective forms out there. Like he wasn't just understood this. He was a living master, a very, very important person. And that man standing beside him, that's Yogananda. Everybody's heard of Yogananda.
Really?
Yes, that's you. And he was the guru of Yogananda. And his guru, Lahari Mahasaya, was basically approached directly from the cosmic avatar called Babaji, who gave him the Kriya Yoga.
Babaji was that recent, or did Babaji kind of come in and out?
I think he came in and out. I don't know if he had a full body, but he's a cosmic. He has that ability to do that. But he appeared before Lahari Mahasaya. And it's funny, you look at all these guys' photo and you see that glowing, like those Tibetan photos. I'll show you some later on. this whole lineage is full of enlightened beings, and some of them are women, like Ananda May. She was a woman, and she enlightened.
Right.
So very, very important lineage. Very, very important. And from a past life perspective, if I told you who those two men were in a past life, it would create all kinds of I'm not even going to get into that. They were important in the past, and they're probably going to be important in our future. So these are important people, very important people. And he basically said that they got the length of the Kali Yuga round, that we simply could not handle another 427,000 years of Kali Yuga. And he was a very competent astronomer, and he calculated that we're in the Sandus period. There's a period between each Yuga cycle called the Sandus period. And it's like, so things don't just chop. One thing doesn't, it's a period. It's like they vary from 200-300 years. They might be longer in the shorter Yugas than in the Golden Age type of Yuga. And it's called a Sandus period. And I'll explain that in a minute here. So the law of Manu talks about how our sun rotates with a twin, binary star system. Everybody loves this. Nibiru, this will feed all the Nibiru fear mongers out there.
Now, this is a proposition that I've never heard. I mean, you have the planet X, which is, that's the 10th star and its orbit is 3,600 years.
We got that wrong too.
But I've never heard that our dual sun is a great year. I've never heard that.
And it makes sense.
Because that's a precession of the equinoxes.
Exactly. And it makes sense if you really think about it. We used to think the precession equinox is from the moon that's spinning around the earth and it's causing that slow wobble. More recent times, they've seen that the outer planets also have a wobble. So what's causing their wobble, right? A lot of them don't even have a moon large enough to cause that effect. So it's makes you wonder what's causing that.
That is never stated. This is the first time I've ever seen that.
Oh, really?
Where do you get that from?
Well, this is part of the law of Manu, and some of it's just to kind of, sometimes when you understand things, you understand certain things, it hits you where you just kind of intuitively know, and that's why
So is that something is that a discovery or a theorem that you're proposing, or do you have
it's a theory that he proposed.
Oh, that he proposed
too.
Because that is amazing. But I mean, that should be widely published, because I've been studying this now since 1973, which is 40 plus years, and nowhere do you find that.
Yeah.
Except in the source that you cited, as far as I understand.
We got some great things to show you here in a minute, but I've got some pickers here. Can we take like a 2-minute break? And I'm just gonna go pay them, and I'll be right back. Is that cool?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah. Okay. So we're back now, and what I'm thinking is this.
We're getting a bad.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
It's kind of on and off. It's
Oh boy.
Okay, there. I can hear you now.
Oh, good. What I'm thinking is, this is so exciting, because you have reached the issue of the dual star that passes, rotates around a dual star every 24,000 years, or every great year. And you're about to go into some awesome points that are on this page. And we're at about an hour and 30 minutes, about 90 minutes, which is almost a complete program. So what I'm thinking is, why not finish off this point at this, and then we'll close this as part 1.
Yep.
And we'll publish this as part 1, and then we'll pick up from here in a part 2, which we'll schedule. We'll talk off camera about when to schedule part 2. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds okay. And there's probably about 2 or 3 slides after
Yeah,
this.
yeah, no, fine.
Is it?
Great. Yeah, yeah. So you tell
Okay.
me, we'll kind of see when organically it kind of comes to an end.
Okay.
Okay, good. So tell us, this is so exciting.
Okay. So this is not just Shri Yukteswar's theory. It came from the law of Manu. So there was a source document that he got this information from. And I mapped it out on my own sort of wheel, and I started finding out the dates fit exactly to what this theory is saying, and they don't fit to the traditional Mahayuga theory of 4.32 million years. So he was right. I really think that if we really want to know on this planet where we're kind of at in the Kali, this guy was correct, and I'll explain it now. So he says that it rotates around a dual sun every 24,000 years. Now I know with supercomputers, we were and Shri Yukteswar didn't have a supercomputer. He died in 1936 and kind of was living in, teaching in the late 1800s. And we've calculated, I think the most recent calculation for a great year is 26,525 years or something like that. It's about 1,400 years difference in what he said in the 24,000 year. Now, he might still not be wrong, because when we did our mathematics with our supercomputers, we were basing it on the precession of the equinox and what we were able to measure, over a 20-year period of time, and kind of extrapolate out by that. But if you can see my arms, when you see a binary star system, some of them come into perihelion and go out to aphelion, and that can be only 3 years, but some of them have like 100,000 year, 25,000 year period between, and when they come in, they speed up, they slow up, and they speed up. You see that motion?
Yeah.
So our scientists aren't calculating it, if there is a dual star out there, the proper cycle potentially. I am a little bit suspicious of the 24,000 with 3 zeros, simply because a year on our one solar year is 365.25554 days or whatever. It's kind of rounded off a little too nicely, but I think it's within the ballpark.
Right.
So and how did some ancients way back when even know this? You know what I mean? Like, we didn't know about the precession of equinox, till the time of Plato and stuff. They started sort of seeing the precession of the equinox. So like this went back a long way. And it's caused by this celestial body. And this theory, what they talk about is there's actually 2 arcs. One's an ascending arc and one's a descending arc. So he's talking about the electric universe before an electric universe even became so-called popular, right? Like, everybody talks about it now. And consciousness rises and falls as these 2 stars come in. So as they come in, you have a golden age, which kind of makes sense if you believe when I talk about how the spirit is affected by electric fields and magnetics. You have a golden age as the stars start coming together. And then as they go further out, you have the dark age. When they're the furthest point away, that's when a dark age occurs, because there's less, the energy is different, right? Like, these stars, these are 2 basically stars, and because we have one that's 25,000 years, would say that our twin is much smaller, because if they were closer size stars, their period would be shorter, and if there's bigger differences in the size, the bigger the time will be before they come back together again. And it's not a crazy theory when you think about it. 70% of all solar systems are binary, so potentially ours is. But what comes really neat is it brings complete changes to the material world when these stars come in and when they go out. So that's the Yuga cycle. That's what this whole theory is, how the Yuga cycles really, and mental dharma virtue or mental virtue rises and falls like the seasons. And that's really what the Yuga cycle is about, is this rising and falling with these 2 stars. And when they reach the nearest point, man can comprehend all, and that's the golden age. But it's also when they come together. And when you go back 12,000 years ago, there was a big cataclysm on this planet. That's probably what caused the ice age, because when the star dual comes in, it also creates problems, right? Because it could be pole shifts, there could be all kinds of things that occur when these two stars come together.
So let me get this. when the sun is at its nearest point, virtue is fully developed, and man can comprehend all. That's the golden age, but that's the age of cataclysm.
Just for a short period, and it makes sense for it to happen right in the middle of the golden age rather in the dark age, because then we'd really have a hard time getting back up on our feet.
So Atlantis, which happened 12,500 years ago.
Exactly. You got it.
That cataclysm happened at the height
of the golden age.
Of the golden age.
Yes.
And we're now 12,500 years from there. We're at the farthest point away.
We're kind of a little bit past it. We're actually entering. I'll show you the next slide.
But just to get this, I want to get it. See, this is internalizing new knowledge, right? When the sun is at the furthest point away from its dual mental virtue is at its lowest point. So right now, dual mental virtue, my entire lifetime, our entire lifetime, dual mental virtue on this planet has been at its lowest point. How about that? World War I, World War II.
Absolutely.
We're trying to keep them out of World War III. And that's what we volunteered for at this time as starseeds. God, we must be crazy. Are we bodhisattvas, or are we kind of like wannabe bodhisattvas?
Well, maybe wannabe bodhisattvas who spent too much time on the internet.
I think.
So I got a couple other stars. So as this two stars come together, the nearest point, that's the seat of Vishnu Yabi, and Vishnu is actually Krishna, but the seat of Brahman. That's the golden age, and it makes sense if these electric bodies coming together, it changes. Probably at some point we'll even experience a dimensional change. And that's what maybe in the golden age we actually sort of vibrate in the fifth dimension, or go to the fourth and then the fifth. It's a slow process. It's not just bang, it's all going to happen. It's as these bodies come together and separate. And
so how does this fit in? Let me just ask you, and maybe I'm anticipating, but what the heck? How does this fit in with the whole ascension theory that we're moving up to 5D?
That's the next two slides. We cover that.
Oh my God! I must be psychic.
I knew that it would be like this with you. Just you. Yeah. See, I made this presentation for you. You're one ahead just naturally, so it's good. So at the furthest point, consciousness falls, and we have a dark age, because those two bodies are the electric universe changes, consciousness changes, and you have a dark age. So what my theory in all of this is, why I'm sharing it is the multiverse. I think you call it the omniverse. I like the multiverse better, but it doesn't matter.
No. In my theory, not to belabor the point, but we have three great cosmological bodies through which humanity comprehends the cosmos. The universe, which goes back to 3,000, BC, 3,500 BC. The multiverse, which goes back to 1895, when they first started using it, the great American psychologist William James. And then the omniverse, which goes back to 2014, when two scientists separately published books in several parts of the world about the omniverse, entitled The Omniverse. Bertolacci and Webre published two books. And the difference between the two, and this is where there might be some confusion between the omniverse and the multiverse. the multiverse, the definition of the universe is an organic unit of time, energy, space, and matter. Boom.
Yeah.
The multiverse is the collection of all universes or all units of time, energy, space, and matter. And there's even an estimate of their number by two scientists at Stanford. It's 10 to the 7th to the 7th. It's a humongous number.
Yeah.
And then the omniverse, and we've developed an equation of the omniverse, which is expressed in my book, Pride of Authorship, is omniverse equals multiverse plus spiritual dimensions. And the spiritual dimensions equals the intelligent civilization of souls plus spiritual beings plus source. And in the greater sense, what creates the universes of the multiverse is the collective spiritual dimensions. In other words, the souls and the spiritual beings and source all act together to create and maintain the universes of time, energy, space, and matter into which the souls incarnate. But also, you know, you'll have your father and your mother, like you said, come around and say, hey, get down to the hospital. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
That is, and that's what we call the dimensional ecology of the omniverse. We're inside a dimensional ecology. Anyway,
that's the best explanation I've ever heard of that. That's
oh,
really
great.
good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got that in your book, I hope.
Yeah, it is. That
okay.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
That is what the book does. It sets out that model with using the scientific method backup.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So this is my quote. I think it's in my book, but
yeah,
I believe the multiverse or omniverse is a precision timepiece of the creator for the evolution of consciousness. So every one of these solar systems, even if they're single, there might be something else that takes place that helps consciousness rise, and it falls, but it's always growth. And it's kind of mind-boggling when you really think about this, that this is what's really going on. These yuga cycles and this whole rise and fall is there for the evolution of consciousness. And that's why this golden age to happen is really important, that more of us become enlightened and more of us understand this stuff to a greater depth, so that we can help be the change, because we have to change our own consciousness to really change the world. We can't just sit around and wait for galactic salvation or anything like that. We have to do the work, and we have to do it now. Now's the time. We're in the sweet spot. I'll get into the next slide, that we're in a good spot now. We're out of the Kali Yuga. It's not going to end in 2025, I don't think. I think it's already happened. So this slide's kind of busy. This is out of the Holy Science, Shri Yukteswar's book. He wrote a kind of a small book, but it's an amazing book. It's called The Holy Science, and this is a diagram that he did, and all this red stuff, all this red writing, is what I added in there so that we can now talk about this how we actually fit, how actually our time fits. So if you go to the top of this and you see the nearest point, that's the Golden Age, which roughly 12,000, exactly what you said, 12,500 years ago, is when Atlantis fell. And it's probably what caused the Ice Age and kind of a collapse. But if you go along, there's two arcs. There's on this left side, this is the descending arc. I lost my cursor. You see how you come down like this? There's a 12,000 year period of descending arc, and you hit the very bottom here, which is the Dark Age, and then you have a 12,000 year ascending arc. So Shri Yukteswar measured right here in 1894. He took a measurement, and he believed we were still in the Sandus period of Dwapara Yuga, that we had already left the Kali Yuga, and that we're in the Sandus period, which is still kind of, you still feel the effects. And we're now completely into Dwarpa Yuga, and that's really what 2012 was about. Everybody tried to make it the end of time, and we're going to change dimensions and all this stuff. And why did the Mayans have a 5,000-year calendar when the Mayan civilization, really, depending on who you talk to, didn't start to about 400 to 600 AD, yet their calendar starts in 3012 BC, before Christ. So they got this, so it came from somewhere else. It's not their calendar, somebody gave it to them. Guess what? They had Vimanas, they had flying machines, and I know you interviewed a guy a couple of years ago. I watched an interview where he was talking about those figurines of Hindu figurines in California. They're finding in Mexico tribes who do Rama and Sita festivals. Rama, which was Krishna in a past life, and Sita was his spiritual wife. They're finding figurines of Ganesh in South America. And we got one right here in Alberta called Omak. And we're going to talk about that in the next interview, where it's a site that also has an exact 5,000-year calendar. And it's probably synced up with the same one down in. So these ancients came here, they built all these megalithic structures for spiritual purposes, and I guess we're going to go into that in the next thing, but they also, they went all over and were teaching our ancestors this, probably so as we went through this dark age at the bottom here, we would still have these teachings, and some of these avatars even appeared during this time to help us through it. But if you go down this descending arc, you see it's a little bit different. You go Satwa Yuga, Tetra Yuga, Dwarpa Yuga, and Krita Yuga, but then you go back up. It doesn't just go bang from Satwa Yuga to Kali Yuga. It rises and it falls, and it makes more sense this way because everything's in balance in the universe. There's no bang where you just go from total darkness to total lightness. That just doesn't happen.
Right.
So I believe this model really works, and I plotted it here. I hope you can you see my cursor from your end?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so they know in Hindu scripture that Rama was here in Tetra Yuga. He was in Tetra Yuga. They know that. That's in scriptural knowledge. And if you look at here, 5,000 BC on this model, right about there, so he was here 7,000 years ago, Tetra Yuga. It fits. And now Krishna ushered in the Kali Yuga. So he was here in Dwarpa Yuga, and again, they know that Krishna was in Dwarpa Yuga. And if you go down here, 3000 BC, Krishna was in Dwarpa Yuga. So these two dates, they're very competent astronomers at those times, and they're very important dates, the birth and the death of Krishna and Rama, because they recorded where the sun is, where the planets were, and where many constellations were. They were very good astronomers back then. So we can go back and confirm that those were the actual dates. It wasn't how we lost things in time. Those two dates, but there's a third date, and there was another fellow by the name, his name was Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's hard to say, but he was another sage from India, but he was more of a contemporary. He came in 1486. He was over here after, right at the very dark point, because they say Krishna has to come back to usher in the golden age, or the stream of the golden age. We're a long ways from the full-on gold, but we're on the positive arc. So when you're on this side of the descending arc, every day gets a little bit worse. We're over here now. Every day is going to be better. That's the nice thing.
I see. We're
out of the Kali Yuga, and every day is going to, and it might not seem like that in the external world, but I don't know if you've noticed since 2012, there's been some subtle changes, and one of the main ones is just the average person, they're starting to realize the fake media, the fake news.
Yeah.
Just people who weren't even looking at this kind of stuff and seeing it for what it really was, really seeing how off it is now, because the veil is being lifted. We're on the stream of the golden age now. These old tricks aren't going to work very much longer on people. Like it's our consciousness is rising, and it's to do with the sun. The sun changes. So it's like the Gnostics used to say, and you asked this question earlier, when are we going to change this dimension? And my answer is, I don't know. I wished I did, but at some point along this line, I don't think we have to get right to the top to have. and the Gnostics used to have this thing called the Omega point. It's where at some point we reach a point where things change, and it sounds like a dimensional change almost. And I really believe that the Omega point that we'll experience will probably be in this time frame. Like we're in the zone now. We're entering the but it's dependent on how fast we lift our consciousness. If we continue to be ignorant, and remember, ignorance in Buddhism isn't lack of scholarly knowledge, it's lack of knowing your true self, your true nature, your Buddha nature. And so it's not, but we have to break free from that. We have to help. We can make this golden age come sooner. We're in the stream of the golden age. And the other nice thing is, I think when we go completely around this in 24,000 years, when we hit the Kali Yuga again this time, we're not going to fall back. We're going to hold the light on this planet. This is an ascending, this is what this is all about. We might start cheating in Scrabble again, maybe in the next, but we're not going to have World War III, World War II, World War I. You know, we're not going to do all these horrible things that we've done in the past. And then if you go back to this thing and you sort of look at this now, and the interesting thing is Göbekli Tepe, which we'll talk about in the next, that's a megalithic structure they found in Turkey that they say is 12,000 years. And it was buried by little tiny stones. It's just like Stonehenge, but it's more refined. The stones are completely smooth, and it's a much nicer site. It's more effort was into making that site, but it's 12,000 years old. And I'm telling you, I'll show you in the next presentation. It was used for spiritual purposes. So why did they build something 12,000 years ago and bury it? And my belief is they knew the twin was coming in. It was going to be a cataclysm. You never really know what, because the Earth is in a different position at the sun every time this thing comes in. So every time it's a little bit different. So even if you were an advanced race with advanced tech, you would not know where the safe place would be. You know, some of this stuff that we hear about Antarctica having a civil, that could have happened then. That's when it happened. You know what I mean? Like pole shift happens and you just, Atlantis was the wrong place to be at that time. And even if there was an advanced race there, they might not know that. There's too many unanswered variables, even that science wouldn't be able to answer. And it depends on where our position is around our sun and how this thing came in each time. Every time's a little bit different.
That is amazing. Could you, with your cursor, just show where December 21st, 2012 appears on this chart? More, approximately.
It's roughly. See these red lines that I've drawn in here?
Yeah.
Those represent the. Where's my cursor? That represents this Sandus period between those, and I really believe that December 21st, 2012 is right on that red line. That's what we actually left.
Okay. December 21st, 2012 is well into the return phase.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a celebration. Hey, and virtue's at 50% now. We should be happy about that. We got to make most of it. And then we still have to do our practices and awaken ourselves.
Yeah.
We're in a good spot.
So there where it says the farthest point, what would be your estimate of what year was it where it was the farthest point?
That was 500 AD.
500 AD. That is approaching the Dark Ages.
Yeah, well, I'll show you on the map here. I'll get it. So if you look at here, that's when Krishna came.
Yeah.
And we got to remember, I don't know why my cursor keeps wanting to take off on me here, but when Rama came, there was the Ramayana War. So we had a big war in the Tetra Yuga, which we shouldn't have had. And I believe really that the Luciferian Rebellion and some of the kind of was happening at this time, because the Ramayana, they were fighting against somebody in space. Like there were bananas fighting in space. Yeah. It wasn't just like this swords and type of, and either was the Kurukshetra war in the time of Krishna, which was in the Dwapara Yuga. Yeah. So we had wars in Tetra Yuga, but they were on the descending arc. And I think we had some negative influence come in at that point.
Right.
to kind of, so we go to Rama, and that's the time where some of these Stonehenge devices appeared. They also appeared 12,000 years ago. If we go down here, we see when Krishna came, Dwarpa Yuga. But now watch this. We have Abraham right around the same time, Stonehenge. We have Moses, King David. Buddha shows up. You see how Buddha showed up right in the early part of the Dark Age?
Yeah.
You know, there was wars then. There was a lot of, and that's why I think the Kalachakra Tantra wasn't taught openly, because we were heading into the Dark Age. This is when we were our worst. And Jesus came right here. So Jesus came in a pretty important point when things were pretty dark.
Things were really dark.
You know, and, you know, I don't like to sound over religious, but, you know, like the nations with Vikings and things like that, Christianity calmed all of that. Jesus' teaching really did calm a lot of the darkness that was in this planet. We still have the control and stuff, but his teachings were profound and they changed a lot of things, you know, they did. And he came at a very important time. And you know, if you get into 500 AD, after this, going on the upward swing, this is where the Dark Ages, like where they were hanging people and racking them and quartering and having them in Europe, and the Dark Ages, the Spanish Inquisition, and the Napoleonic Wars, all that stuff happened in this zone here. And this is where we had Padmasambhava come. We had Atisha, we had Tsongkhapa, we had all these sages come to help us all the way through this. You know, like they all appeared in this short, like most of the great ones appeared just in this little short time right here, more recent times. And so the Mayan calendar really ends right there. I've put a diagram there.
Right.
And we're on the ascending arc now. You know, we really are. And here's a funny thing. Like if we go back to that 4.32 billion years or million years, where most Vedic researchers would be very adamant, we got 427,000 years of Kali Yuga. Sometimes you just got to apply logic. We have 3 known incarnations of Krishna. He comes as Rama here. He comes as Krishna, which is a full vestive avatar, where what that means is the avatar can sometimes just send a component of himself into a planet where the rest of him they can actually split themselves. Only Das avatars can do this. So he has an appearance here, and then he has another appearance over here. So in this very short time frame of a few thousand years, he's come 3 times. Yet if you follow the old logic, we got to go around this thing 50 more times before he appears in the last time as the Kalki avatar, or the rider on the white horse, if you want to call him that. And it doesn't make sense. The logic doesn't apply. When you fit these dates into this model, it works. It fits. I think I really do.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I'm looking at one of your books, and it's Remember Zen: Awaking the Buddha Nature Within. Is any of this material in your book? If people want to go on,
it's all
on Amazon.
Some of these diagrams aren't in the book. I try to not have too many diagrams in a book. But it's all in the book, and so is the Kalachakra Tantra, the teaching that I was telling you about. If you want to awaken to your own nature sooner, you probably should read that book, but you should be an advanced student. It's something that you shouldn't just go out and read and start practicing unless you've done some of the preliminary work.
Okay, good. Well, you know what I'm thinking, Sheldon, is that this might be both a good way to end part 1, but also a good way to start part 2. When we do part 2, we could start on this slide, and then you could just remind people, and then just kind of take it from there. Yeah.
There's just one more slide.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't know.
That's okay. Everybody's seen the yin and yang symbol, right?
Oh, yeah.
You know, see how there's 2 objects there. Now, if you think about, remember I told you about the stars speeding up and then slowing down in this motion? Everything is balanced. So if you had the old Yuga cycle where it goes right from Kali Yuga directly into Dwarpa Yuga, you wouldn't see this nice smooth transition like you see in this. This is really the 2 stars. This is what this is representing.
Oh
And
my God, how esoteric is that?
as they come together, you can see that the bigger parts are together, so you get this huge golden age of 10,000 years. But as they go way out, it's very slim. The line's very, so you only get a very short Kali Yuga, and that's what this is really representing. It's in there. It's talking. But we lose.
How
So
esoteric is it that the yin yang symbol is really a symbol of the dual star precession of the equinoxes?
yeah. And it's also rise and fall of darkness and good.
Right,
It's the old thing, right? It's right
right,
there in front of us, but we miss things all the time.
right.
You really have to research a lot to get all the little subtleties, this is 30 years, maybe many lifetimes of thinking and stuff. But they're all there. It's all there right in front of us. And then this is the last slide. So
Okay.
if you look at this 2012 was really the ending of a minor cycle. And I think it was the cycle of Vishnu, because he was here, because the Mayan calendar starts right when Krishna departs. There's only like a 10 or 12 year difference. So when you're talking about a 5,125 year period, which is the length of the Mayan calendar, you really have to think that, if it's that close, and the Mayan civilization wasn't even existed, why were they having a calendar that was 3,600 years before they existed? It doesn't make sense. Somebody else
Right.
brought that information to them. So if you look over on this sacred conch, the universe is developed this way. This is our binary system. You see this? This is the dual star over and over every 25 or 24,000 years, but there's cycles within cycles. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
As we're going over and over, there's solar system cycles or yuga cycles, but there's much bigger cycles. And they were measuring this in Vedic literature, and it's called the Manu, which is the celestial king of the universe. And these Manus, each Manu has a ruling period of 300 million years. It doesn't mean they live that long, but that's their ruling period. So maybe they are incarnated. And I think whoever these Manus, and this is part of what 2012 really was, is it's a changing of the guards. It's a changing of the next teacher, world teacher, or Buddha that comes. And it's a changing of the next world king that comes. There's actually two people in these cycles. And it really blows my mind when you think about it, is they were monitoring 300-year Manu cycles. So whoever this Manu is, probably an Andromedan or a Palladian, he's their king as well. It's not just bound to this earth. This is a big thing, and it's everywhere. So I think this planet has bigger importance than we give ourselves credit for. There's some big things going to happen down on planet Earth here, and maybe it's because what we can do out, like when we do finally really go out into the multiverse, we go out there as fully conscious beings, carrying beings, and we can do incredible things when we're in that space. We're just not in that space. We let our corporations go out there right now and put coke machines everywhere and drill for oil and do all the damaging things. That's not what it's about. We have to be right before we go out and take the flight as well. And that's part of what this is. And it's just, there's minor cycles and there's major cycles. And two of them really came to head in 2012. And I don't know if you read that article I sent you about this. I was out kind of warning people, you got it all wrong. This is not the end. You've probably seen that. And it didn't get anywhere because everybody believed that we're going to get saved by galactic people. The world, the golden age was just going to go pop, and we'd all have rainbows around us and everything would be great. It's a bit slower process than that. But the main thing is in all of this, and we'll get into that in the next lecture, is awakening to your own Buddha nature. That's the main thing. It's all of this stuff is just fun to talk about, but the real crux of my presentation in the later ones is about how to awaken yourself, how to awaken your own Buddha nature. And we missed some stuff there, some big stuff. It can literally take decades off a practitioner's path to enlightenment. But I say that with caution. You have to be, your spiritual foundation has to be right before you start taking some of these steps that we'll share. But I think it's important to get them out there, because I've been sitting on this for a long time. It's like we've been talking for 6 years now. And we're in year 777 in the Jewish Hebrew year. And that's a main marker. That's a marker too. It's the year of completion. And I think you're going to see some big things. Some will be negative, but I think you're going to see some big things shaking out down here in the next coming years. We're in interesting times. We really are.
Very good. Thank you. Well, good. This is absolutely, I mean, I am beyond words. So I will just kind of leave us here with his contemplating, and in part one of this interview with Sheldon Moore. Sheldon, I want to thank you for having prepared all of this for us, and we look forward to part two, which will be bringing you in the near future. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. And just for the listeners, if you liked what was said in part one, part two and part three is going to totally blow you away. There's what's coming next is this is the tip of the iceberg. Really, it really is. I'm going to share kind of, when you look at eschatology, the study of the end times, which really isn't the end of time, it's the beginning of the next cycle. You got to look at the Hindu, the Vedic, the Buddhist. If you look at all of them, all of these things, they all interconnect. And I believe that a lot of times these avatars are the same people. So one religion might be blasting another one, and their people that they're following actually was the same person. So there's a real connection there that we've separated with our belief systems and stuff. But sometimes you got to just sit up a little bit higher and look down on it and kind of see all of it, right?
Very good. Just excellent. If people want to get in touch with you, can they do so, or?
Yeah, I can leave you an email link, and
okay.
I don't really like to plug the book This is the book. It's Remember Zen. It's easy to remember. It's Remember Zen, and everything that we're going to cover in the next 3 interviews are in this book in much greater detail. And so if you're on the path to higher consciousness, it's probably one of those books you should get. I tried to put the price at $1.08 to make it just dirt cheap for everybody on Amazon.
Wow.
And but they don't allow you to do it because 108 is a sacred number in Buddhism, and
amazing.
So, but they wouldn't let me do it. So sorry, you're going to have to pay $4 or a cup of coffee. It's I think for some people who are searching, it's probably worth reading. It's a pretty deep book though. It's not green eggs and ham or real light reading. It'll pull you in. It's a hard book to read.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Okay, until next time in part 2. Thank you very much.
Thank you.